Paul says, "Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. The trumpet shall sound, the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed." And Paul seems to indicate here, well, he says that the rapture is going to happen at the last trumpet. What was Paul talking about when he said the last trumpet? Well, I think he was probably making reference to the Feast of Trumpets. Throughout the book of Corinthians, Paul makes allusions to a number of the Jewish feasts. And a little chart up here. The first feast was Passover. That's in the spring. And then that was during what's called the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And unleavened bread was a 7-day period where God said to Israel, do not eat anything leavened. They had to throw all the leaven out, all your Wonder Bread, all your thick loaves of bread, you got to throw it all out. You eat only the matzah, the thin crackers, unleavened bread, during that 7 days. The first night of it was Passover. And Jews today still celebrate Passover. It's the oldest running feast in the world. 3,500 years they've been celebrating that. And then the first day after the Sabbath, what day would that be, the day after the Sabbath? Sunday, right. Was another Jewish feast called the Feast of First Fruits. And then they counted 50 days, or 7 weeks plus 1, 50 days, and they had another Jewish feast called Pentecost. Now, these feasts were not only historical in nature, they were prophetic in that they spoke of things to come. When Israel celebrated the first Passover some 1,400 years before Jesus, what happened some 1,400 years later on Passover, on the very day Jesus, the Lamb, was sacrificed for our sin as the Passover Lamb. And then the day after the Sabbath, Sunday, was the Feast of First Fruits. And what happened on that day? Resurrection of Jesus. He arose from the dead. As Paul says in this book, he is the first fruits of them that rise from the dead. Most Christians don't realize that the resurrection of Jesus was on a Jewish holiday, a feast day. They counted another 50 days, and they came to Pentecost. What happens on Pentecost? Spirit of God come down, the church starts. Now, there is a break. These feasts are set up on an agricultural calendar. That you had 4 of them in the spring, there was a long break during the summer, then you had another 3 in the fall. During the summer, what are they doing? They're bringing in the harvest. We are now living in this church age. It's the harvest age. We're bringing in the harvest. Jesus said, pray ye for the Lord of the harvest. Bring more laborers. The harvest is great, workers are few. What's the next feast on the prophetic calendar? It is the Feast of Trumpets. The Feast of Trumpets prophetically speaks of the rapture of the church. So when Paul says that the rapture is going to happen at the last trumpet, I think he's probably talking about the Feast of Trumpets. Now, on the Feast of Trumpets, there are 100 trumpet blasts sounded throughout the day. There are 4 different types of trumpet blasts. There is a takaya, which is 1 long blast. There is a shavarim, 3 short ones, like doot, doot, doot. There's a tura, 9 short ones, doot, 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 doot. And then the 100th trumpet, the takaya gadolah, the great or the last trumpet, is the 100th trumpet blast on the Feast of Trumpets. Is Paul telling us the rapture will happen on the Feast of Trumpets?